Hello, I go by Larbird33. So this is my podcast where I call up strangers and chat with them about the Celtics. If you like this crap, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Last episode, I called up Eddie20, my nemesis. It was a great conversation. Probably should have called him a long time ago. This episode is going to be kind of similar. So there's this guy who goes by the name of BigAustralianBoat, and he's a big reason why I decided to even start this project. Long story short, he got suspended temporarily from Reddit for saying he'd be happy if I killed myself. So it kind of just got me thinking, anonymous text-based chat can bring out the worst in people. So on top of that, I'm pretty convinced that Big Australian Boat is keeping a secret. I don't think he's who he claims to be. I have a feeling that he's an alt account of someone from my past. So I fully intend to get to the bottom of that in this episode. This episode is sponsored by Cousin Mike's Trunk Clams. My cousin Mike, he's good people. If you see him, tooling around in Salem in his 1987 Buick Regal with the rusted roof, just flag him down and ask him about his trunk clams. Look, I don't know where he gets them. I don't ask these questions. I just know you're getting a bargain, all right? Some of the clams are raw. Some of them are fried. Cousin Mike's the only guy who fries the entire shell with the clam that's still inside. So I'm not saying that's better or worse. I'm just saying you're getting an experience, all right? Use the promo code LB33 to get 33% off your first order of Cousin Mike's Trunk Clams. And remember to look for the rusted roof. All right, let's bring on Big Australian Boat. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I got you, Larbird. How's it going?
All right, man. Big Australian Boat.
That's me.
My apologies in advance that I'm still alive.
We should discuss that.
Yeah.
In hindsight,
well, no,
probably.
hold on. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. Derrick Rose recently came out and he apologized for saying the doubter should kill yourself. So there's some precedent, I think, for this kind of thing, even within the NBA.
Fair. All right, I'll take that.
But listen, obviously the Celtics are having some drama right now, and you and I had a little bit of drama. So it might be a good idea, I think, for us to connect about this, and that's part of the reason why I brought you in. Also because Bill Hondo kind of threw down the gauntlet.
Sure did.
And challenged you to appear on this. So
I gotta say, this wasn't in my top 5 things that I expected to happen, was to be on a podcast with you of all people. But here we are.
It's been a fun project, I'm connecting with people. I don't know if you heard my last one, but I called up this guy, Eddie20, who I've been arguing with constantly for like 5 years, and I think we finally buried the hatchet. So we'll get into our drama, but I think let's give it a little context for maybe the 2 people that are listening.
Sure.
You ever listen to the Celtics Reddit podcast? I think the guy's name is Brutal Gash that hosts it.
I have not. The only podcasts I really listen to are Locked On Celtics and usually Bill Simmons.
Okay. Well, they're doing a pretty good job, and I got to give them a shout-out because they gave me a shout-out in their most recent episode, but they referred to me as divisive. So I think, you're not alone, I guess, in people that have been annoyed by me in the past. So I guess the thing I'm curious is, how old are you?
I am 32.
Okay, so you're probably almost about the same age as me. Where are you from?
I'm from New Hampshire.
Okay.
How about yourself?
I live in Seattle. I used to live in New Hampshire when I was really little. I lived in North Conway, so I'm from that area as well. What part of New Hampshire are you from?
Near North Conway. I'm from the Lakes region.
Okay.
Yeah, so Lake Winnipesaukee, the big lake.
Nice, man. Nice. I've definitely been there when I was a kid. And you've been, I'm assuming, following the Celtics your entire life then, being out there, right?
Yeah, always been a Celtics guy. Some of my earliest memories are sitting on the couch with my dad, watching the post-Bird Celtics. He tells me that I was there watching, for the later years of Bird, but I can't remember it. So, I was there for the Rick Pitino years, which were amazing. Right.
So I think you and I are probably from the same kind of era. The difference being that, there was kind of like a dark period in my Celtic fandom where I lived in Seattle, and this is before we had the internet.
You couldn't watch them.
You couldn't watch them, couldn't really follow them at all. The only kind of connection I could have was maybe looking at newspapers and box scores, and maybe rarely they'd have a highlight on, ESPN Sports Center. But I was probably around middle school when I first got my first computer, and this is like around 1997. And that was obviously, it was a huge game changer because now I could follow the team every day. My dad and I would huddle around a computer listening to the actual radio broadcast. It wasn't to the point where you could stream video, but we could listen to the radio broadcast.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal for me because being a Celtic fan at this point, 97, pre-Patino, the team was kind of crap. And, everyone in my area, all my fellow friends and stuff from middle school just thought like the Celtics were the lamest thing. They're like, that team's irrelevant. So I had nobody I could connect to with.
People still think that.
Well, a little less. There's a lot more bandwagon fans. But so yeah, like I've been since like 97, I've been chatting with people online. And of course, I've definitely ruffled some feathers along the way, but there's a lot of people that I'm still friends with that I still chat with like all the time. And actually, like the name Larbird33, which is admittedly a very lame username. The reason why I have that name is because when I first signed up for dial-up internet service with my dad, they said you had to have the username for the email address had to be less than 8 characters. It was like this holdover from like the Unix file system era. So I was like, okay, so I was like, oh, obviously I'm going to go with Larry Bird, but remove the I, so it's 8 characters, and that was taken. I'm like, okay, well, how about Larry Bird with 1 R? And that was taken. I'm like, okay, well, clearly Larry B33, perfect. Nope, that was taken. So I just settled on this Larry Bird 33 name.
So you've had this name for over 2 decades now.
For 20 plus years, right? And so I mean, like I was just thinking the other day, I'm trying to remember like the first forum that I started chatting with people on, and it was like really early. Like there wasn't any major Celtics blog forum or Reddit, of course. So the first one I remember going on was just like, I guess, kind of a bulletin board where it was just a page and maybe a comment box, and it was all NBA related. It was no specific team. And people would post pictures, and they would post like, so I was like downloading Larry Bird pictures, like, oh, cool, Larry Bird, and save them in a folder and print them out on my old computer printer that would take like a whole day to print out one little image. But from there, I went on to the ESPN forums, and that was just like a shit show of people arguing with each other. But I kind of avoided any drama on that one. I don't know if you remember that one. That was. I
remember that Hunter Thompson used to write for ESPN.com back in the day.
Sure.
And I used to read that. That was interesting. But yes.
Their forums was just filled with like very poorly moderated people just like talking shit to each other.
Oh yeah.
My fondest memory of that forum was someone had called Marcus Banks a 6'7" Larry Bird. They said Marcus Banks is a 6'7" Larry Bird. Kid's a future star. Book it. Which for some reason it just was hilarious to me. I think they were doing a joke about Yuri Welsh, but using Marcus Banks, and that's like the only really fond memory of the ESPN forums. But from there, Real GM, I was on there for quite a bit. Did you ever go on their forums in the old days?
No, so my thing is I also got the internet around 1997, or at least my family did. But because of the movie First Kid, remember with Sinbad? You remember that movie where he takes care of the kid in the White House?
Yeah, I remember that.
But that kid ended up going online and into a chat room, and the bad guy got him because my parents saw that and they freaked out and they said, "You can't go to any chat rooms. You can't interact with these people online."
So you weren't allowed to.
So I wasn't allowed to do that.
That's funny. No. That's funny. Yeah, my dad didn't care. I just had free reign to do whatever I wanted. But the Real GM forums were interesting, but the problem with that place is because of the nature of that forum, people all want to be like insiders.
Sure.
Trade ideas and stuff. So if you go to the forums, there's always a couple people who are pretending to have inside information. They're all full of shit, though. It's like these guys are like, yeah, my sister, she works for the team, and she tells me we're going to try a trade for Kevin Love. And people are like, they just grovel at their feet. They're like, oh, an insider, but it's all bullshit. None of these people are legitimate. So that place, I eventually abandoned that. But yeah, man. So the point is, like, I've been like 20 years, I've been chatting with people on the internet, and on Celtics blog alone, I had like over 20,000 posts. And inevitably, I think you're going to run into some people who disagree with you. So I've had basically, I think maybe a handful of major beefs with people over the past 20 years. And I'm going to go through them because I think somewhere in there might be hints on who you are, because I think you're lying to me. I think you're lying to me about who you actually are.
I have to say, you're one of the most paranoid people I've ever interacted with, because I remember one time you linked to this, the string of messages that somebody sent you, and you made a very convincing argument that it was me. It was not me. But I thought that was really, really funny. And
okay.
I was like, but I can understand based on those messages why you might be a little bit paranoid, because dude, some people hate your guts.
Oh, some people do. But let's go through it. I want to go through and basically clear the air with you and anyone else on why I'm so divisive.
Let's do
so
it.
The first major beef I remember I had was with this guy who went by the name of B-Ball Tim, and he was on the old Celtics blog forums. And this guy was like the #1 Rondo fan in the world. He was like the epitome of a homer when it came to Rondo. Rondo was an MVP in his eyes. He was the best point guard in the league. And of course, like, people say I'm a pessimist. I feel like I'm more of a realist. But my take on it was I love Rondo, but I mean, there's some flaws in his game. And
yeah, of course. There was a time though when he was in that best point guard conversation.
He definitely
you could put him in the conversation for sure.
So he was, he was the elite pure point guard and the leading the league in assists. But my take at the time was because he wasn't a great shooter, of course, he was a liability when he didn't have the ball. And like I went back and forth with this guy, B-Ball Tim, for a couple years. He was just insistent that Rondo was the best. And I kind of got this label as like a Rondo hater that first, I didn't think was warranted. I just didn't think he was the best point guard in the league. And so that was like my first major beef was with this B-Ball Tim guy. And I think it culminated at some point where the Celtics tried to trade for this guard. He was like a decent shooter, young guy. He was kind of injury prone, played for Golden State. And I advocated at the time, I was like, this is a good idea. Let's get this guy. I know he's only averaging 15 points, and I know he's injured right now. But if you put this shooter, it was Steph Curry, right? So, but at the time, it was like, are you crazy? Why would you trade Rondo for, he's an all-star point guard for this 15, right. He's only averaging 15 points. He's not that good. He can only shoot. And so basically
that's tough, man. I might have said the same thing. Like, right. I'm not going to pretend and lie, but I might have been like, that's a stupid trade.
Right.
It's just, Rondo wasn't very old at the time.
It was one of my first takes that got me the label as being a troll. When in reality, and look back in it, I don't know, man. I think it would have been a good idea to trade for Steph Curry.
Yeah, but, in hindsight, that would have been a good trade.
But anyways, B-Ball Tim was my first major beef. That guy hasn't logged in to Celtics blog in over 2 years. 2016, he hasn't been anywhere. So eventually I'm going to guess who you are, but I'm keeping open the idea that maybe you're B-Ball Tim. So moving on.
Okay, moving on.
The second major
I'm
beef.
not B-Ball Tim.
You're not B-Ball, okay. The second major beef I had was with Eddie 20, who I just had a podcast with, and anyone who wants to hear that, they can go and listen to it. But just back and forth endlessly about everything NBA related, mostly about the Sixers. I think we finally buried the hatchet, so I can move on from that one. I think Eddie 20 and I are tight now, no problem.
Like it.
The third one, so this one's well documented. If you go to the Fantasy B-Ball subreddit and sort by all-time top posts,
yeah.
The number 2 post all time, I think right now, is basically my opus. It's this. So I didn't think anyone was actually going to read this. I thought maybe we'd have a couple people that thought it was funny, but it ended up going viral. Basically, I was recruited into this cutthroat league of all Celtics fans, 20 different teams, and it was a fantasy basketball keeper league. And when I was recruited, the guy told me, he's like, I actually told him, I said, I've been in fantasy basketball leagues before and I can be super annoying. I'm just like super persistent. I send out so many, I'm like the most annoying person in the world when it comes to a fantasy league because I will not stop sending you trade requests. And he's like, no. This league's cutthroat, man. There's people like giving each other death threats in this league. And I'm like, really? All right, I'm in. So I joined it. And again, anyone can just sort fantasy B-ball, sort that subreddit and you'll see this post. But basically I took over a bottom 5 team. And over the course of a couple years, I used every loophole possible and pulled off one lopsided trade after another until I burned bridges with everyone in this league. And above that, because I'm like this video nerd, I was like posting like hype videos for my team, and I was posting like fake press releases, which is all in this post. And I certainly pissed off quite a few people to the point that eventually my team was like unstoppable. And they decided there was like an interim commissioner who rage quit by kicking me out of the league and promised all the bottom feeders in the league that he'd dismantle my team and evenly distribute my players to create some kind of balance. The problem was the post went viral, and I didn't expect it to go viral. And then a couple guys from that league created like these throwaway Reddit accounts to come in and try to discredit my story. But because Reddit is filled with maniacs who they are like super sleuths who went and found like the original threads that this league was operating in, like the original public threads, and went through 2 years of all of our bickering and whining and bitching with one another and basically substantiated my story and said it was valid. And yes, I was annoying, but they kicked me out because I was too good. So so I know that there's quite a few people from that league who kind of have an axe to grind and are still a little bit salty about my performance in that league. And there was once a username on Reddit who went by "fuck you Larbird33," and I suspected that guy might have been one of the people from that league. I know at one point there was a Larbird33 fan account that was just talking shit about me. And then there was another it was very clever. It was Larbird33, but with an I instead of an L, which
Ooh.
because of the font on
Yeah.
on Reddit, it was basically you couldn't tell them apart. So I know there's a few people from that league that are still kind of pissed at me. So that's also a possibility. You might be someone from that league. I've thought about that.
I'm gonna leave that one open.
Okay.
I'm not gonna address that right now. We'll come back to it.
We'll come back to it. All right. Which brings me, I guess, to the Reddit beefs. So I haven't actually been posting on Reddit for too long, just the last couple of years. But over the off season, I had some disagreements with people about Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. One of the key guys was Henry is your boss, who's an awesome poster on Reddit. I've gone back and forth with this guy endlessly about he believing that Jaylen Brown is the best prospect on the team and me believing that Jayson Tatum is. But I don't think that guy and I are, it's not really a beef. Like, I think there's like a mutual respect for one another, and I still chat with that guy all the time. So I don't think that that's too big of a beef. But I do know there's been a lot of people who've been mad at me on Reddit for kind of taking the stance that Hayward would take 12 to 18 months to recover from. So I think that's possible. It's possible that you're one of the guys that just thinks that I was just troll who is talking shit about Hayward.
Okay. I mean, I gotta admit, yes, I was 100% in that camp where I believed that you were trolling for the sake of trolling about Hayward, and because nobody, 12 to 18 months, now seems pretty realistic. Back then, it did not. Because nobody was saying that. Nobody was giving out that information. We didn't hear 12 to 18 months. We were thinking maybe he could be back by the playoffs, which turned out to be, crazy.
Yeah, and
we were all dumb for thinking that.
Well, not necessarily dumb. I kind of admitted many times, obviously I have no medical background, and my basic information was just by Googling the injury and seeing that there was articles that said it could take 12 to 18 months. But I was keeping open hope that he would come back within 5 months. There's a guy on Reddit who goes by the name of Fezjon who has a medical background. I know I mixed it up with him a couple times because he was like, listen, I know what I'm talking about, which he probably did. And I was like, well, I'm just thinking that he might be 18 months until he's 100%. And Fezjon was like, telling me that it shouldn't take nearly that long.
Right.
And it was probably somewhere in between there, right? Because Hayward did have a setback, and he was ready in the off season. So it's not like he actually took 18 months until he could play basketball again. He's just not 100%. So I know I pissed off people through that.
People they forget about the second surgery he had too. So I mean, he had that in June, and so it took him a few months to recover from that. So instead of having the summer to work on his game, he essentially started working on his game in, what was it, late August?
Right.
Or like early September. So, we're just getting out of right now what should have been his time in the off season preparing to play basketball. So that's why he's starting to make some of these leaps, I think. He's starting to look a little bit more like himself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were all wrong. Nobody was right when it came to Hayward.
Totally agree. I'm not trying to say that I was right at all, because I know that he definitely played opening night, and there was definitely points where I had said that it could be 18 months. I think there was definitely a point where I posted that it wouldn't have surprised me if we had kept him out until All-Star break, because I just didn't think that he would be 100%. But on the same time, I mean, there was points last season where I was like, hey, Mike Gorman says that he thinks that Hayward's going to be back for the playoffs. Maybe it's going to happen. Nobody really knew. It was all kind of,
exactly.
We were all kind of guessing.
Yeah. But honestly, throughout this whole thing, I admire your ability to take emotion completely out of the like. I feel like you don't have any emotion whatever when it came to the whole Hayward thing. Like me personally, I mean, he's the biggest free agent signing the Celtics ever had. So I was, we all, and I'm not alone in this. I know I'm not. Like we hyped it up so much in our own minds, and then him falling and breaking his leg was probably, and I'm not joking about this. This isn't hyperbole. Like that was one of the worst things that happened to me that year. Like watching that, like I literally slumped out of my chair and sat on the ground and stared at the ground for like 5 minutes. My dog was like looking at me like I was not okay. I was not okay.
Yeah.
So it was a but you throughout this whole thing, like you just took that out of it, and there's something to be admired for that. So good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to tell through chat. I was definitely distraught, just like every other Celtic fan when that happened. I felt so bad for Hayward. I felt so bad about like uprooting his family, coming to Boston. Probably in some respects still on the fence about whether or not he made the right decision. And also, like in the preseason leading up to that, he hadn't quite found a groove with the team yet.
Right.
And it's just like, that was just, obviously it sucked, but he's finally coming back, so that's good. So the point is, I know there's people that have been pissed about me for that, and
yes.
So the first kind of run-in I had with you was kind of related to Hayward. There was a post that was kind of talking about how Hayward he hadn't really fit in with the team yet, and they were speculating that maybe he didn't have many friends on the team. And someone had commented, but wait, isn't Hayward really close with Baines? And then someone joked, yeah, and Tice. And then another guy joked, well, yeah, man, Boston's really segregated if it's all the white guys. So someone had already said that. They'd already made that joke. And then I posted the actual link. I said, yeah, apparently Baines, Hayward, and Tice all get together in their own private white guy club. And I posted the link that showed that, they hang out. Obviously, it's because they probably all have kids that is, the same age.
They do, yeah.
So that made sense. I was making a joke, but out of nowhere comes this guy named BigAustralianBoat, who I had never even heard of before, who goes, hey, mods, when are you going to get rid of this guy? All he does is troll and bait. And then you tagged 2 mods. And I thought this was so curious because I've been on Reddit for a couple years and I didn't know who the mods were, and yet you did. And then I looked at your profile, and your profile showed that you'd only been around for about a month. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, who's this guy that has only been around for a month, that already has an axe to grind with me, knows the name of the Reddit moderators? That's interesting. So that was like the first kind of red flag. But honestly, it wasn't just me you were trying to ban. I found there was a post where you tried to get a guy by the name of NDGHD. You tried to get him banned. You tried to get a guy named Not a Soy Boy banned. And of course,
he should be banned. I think he was banned, actually.
And then of course, you wouldn't be a Reddit vigilante if you hadn't tried to get Bill Hondo banned as well. So you definitely at one point tried to get Bill Hondo banned. So it wasn't just me, but I was like, what is up with this dude? Why does he hate me? So I had this kind of right away. I'm like, I wonder if he's that guy who goes by Fuck You Larbird 33, or maybe he's one of these guys that I pissed off in the past. So that was it, and a kind of couple months go by, and then there's this kind of so Gordon Hayward scored 30 points against Minnesota, which was awesome. I was ecstatic about it. It was like the best game of the season at that point. And one of the top posts in the Reddit thread about this was a guy who goes, Bill Hondo and Tatum better Fultz are on suicide watch. And then Reese Chops 44 jokes, yeah, Larbird 33 already killed himself. So it was like the idea that we were expecting him to take 18 months. So his good performance, I get it. It's funny. Like we kill ourselves out of shame.
Right.
I didn't really think much of it. It was just funny that one of the top posts was basically joking that I killed myself. And then there were you had said basically it wasn't a big deal. You just said, would I get banned for saying good? Purely hypothetical, basically saying, would it be a bad thing if I said it'd be good if Larbird 33 killed himself? So that was your post, and I know that you did get a temporary suspension for that comment.
I did, yeah. They hit me with a 5-dayer for that one. Okay. So yeah. But
do you want to?
I thought it was interesting that there were multiple people suggesting suicide, and I was the one who got the 5-day. But I mean, that's kind of the hypocrisy. I think that my problem is less with people like you and Bill Hondo and more with the actual mods of the sub. I think they don't do a very good job of letting everybody have a good time. I think when you have a bunch of people together that are passionate about sports, specifically Boston sports, there's going to be some name calling involved. Like, right? I might call somebody a douchebag. They might call me a douchebag. I think that that's fine in the long run. I don't think that we have to regulate it like we're in kindergarten class and, you're not allowed to call a name like, he hit me or whatever. Like let us have it for a little while. You know what I mean? Let us have at it. It's healthy.
I got to be careful though, because they might remove this post if they hear this part. So, I mean, I get what they're trying.
They will.
They will probably. Sorry, they might delete this, but
you can cut that part out if you really
want
to.
Maybe we'll cut that part out.
Just cut that part out. Yeah. So, but in any case, it was not. It ended up not being very funny. I mean, maybe it was a little whatever. I mean, do I really want anybody to kill themselves? No. I mean, it was just kind of a little bit of internet trolling right there. So I do apologize for that post, Larbird 33.
Well, I appreciate it, Bab, Bill, Big Australian Boat.
That name, by the way, comes from Big Australian Boat. Do you know where that comes from?
I just assumed it was a Baines reference.
It is a Baines reference. So if you listen to the Locked On Celtics podcast, they do this thing every Tuesday. This year it's Jay's Taco Truck or whatever, where they give out awards to the best players of the week and whatnot. Last year it was Bain's Big Australian Boat, so who gets to be on the boat this week? So that's it. It's just a reference from that podcast.
Okay, all right, makes sense. So yeah, I obviously I didn't think you actually wanted anyone to kill themselves. I didn't take it too personally, but basically in the midst of your suspension, there is a username that goes by IDGAF_asshole. Basically, I don't give a fuck asshole.
Yeah.
And this guy was interesting because he hadn't made a post in over a year, and as far as I could tell, his account solely existed to talk about vaping. He was on all these different vape, electronic cigarette.
That's why you tell me to vape all the time.
So you told me that you're a vapor. So I'm like, okay, so this guy is a vape connoisseur. And just so happens, in the midst of your 5-day suspension, this guy comes out of nowhere. I joked that I was aware that people on Reddit hated me, and he out of nowhere comes out and says, then do us all a favor and either take the advice and kill yourself or get the fuck out of here. So I was like, okay. And then he basically...
Seems like an overreaction.
He starts following me around from thread to thread, basically saying, do it already. Do it. And one thread after another, basically trying to cyberbully me into killing myself. And I got to be honest, I mean, immediately I'm like, wow, Big Australian Boat is really not taking the suspension well. He dug down deep and found his vape alt to come and talk shit about me. So don't tell me yet. I'm gonna guess who you are, but obviously I don't give a fuck asshole is top of my list. And I have to say that I believe I found a tell. I believe I found a tell that you two were the same, and this could be crazy, but so your account had existed for 5 weeks at that point, and in those 5 weeks you had used LMAO in your comments a total of 46 times. That's a lot of times to be laughing your ass off. It was just one post at one point, post after another is saying laughing my ass off, laughing my ass off, laughing my ass off. I'm scrolling through them right now. I'm like, wow, this guy really likes to laugh his ass off. And then likewise, I don't give a fuck asshole in a span of, his short account had done it a total of 27 times. So I'm looking at him, and it was just post after post after post of, once again, I don't give a fuck asshole just laughing his ass off, laughing his ass off. And I had to say, I mean, not only do you vape, but you laugh your ass off, and you both want to kill me. So, all right. So, anyways, but don't answer yet. You're familiar with Rumpelstiltskin, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm gonna have 3 guesses here. 3 guesses, and if I get one of them right, you just have to come clean and tell me all of your different alt accounts. All right?
Fair.
All right. So, number 1, the first guess I'm gonna go with is the "fuck you, Larbird 33" account. Was that you?
No.
It wasn't you.
It was not me.
Okay. Because that guy had said some weird ass shit, and he definitely hated me. So
was that the one where you sent me the screenshots of the messages?
He had definitely said some very outlandish shit to me in these messages. Yeah. It was kind of homoerotic at points, but okay, not you. You're denied. Definitely not you.
Not me.
All right. The second one I'm gonna guess is I don't give a fuck asshole. That has to be you.
Not me.
Are you
I'm
serious?
telling you.
That's
I'm
not
telling
you.
It's going to be very underwhelming.
So that guy who comes out of nowhere in the midst of your suspension to basically try to cyberbully me into killing myself, that's not you.
I promise that's not me.
Just a coincidence that you guys vape and all that.
I feel like a lot of people vape. I vaped in an Uber last night because the guy offered it to me. Like, I don't have a vape, but I mean, whatever. It is what it is.
All right, man. I'm gonna believe you, and I'm just gonna say, if this podcast doesn't go well, just reach out to him. You guys have a lot in common.
Maybe we can vape. I'm down.
All right, so
I don't mind vaping.
So
I'm not an enthusiast, but
my third and final guess, and maybe I will be totally wrong. Hopefully, you'll tell me who you are, anyways. But my third guess is that, and this guy hasn't posted in a couple months. It's the guy who goes by the username Nitto1337, NITTO1337. Is that you?
Where'd you come up with that one?
It's you, isn't it? So, like you said, I'm a crazy person. So I use the same machine learning, artificial intelligence technology that exposed Brian Colangelo's burner accounts. And what I did is I programmed a script that over the course of a few weeks data mined millions of Reddit posts on the Celtic sub and then pulled them into a database that analyzed the post content to find any kind of aberrations. So it looked at like text pattern, average post length, content similarities, the typical hours that they post on Reddit, that kind of stuff. And ultimately, it determined that you two were the same person just because it was pretty obvious in the kind of content you posted, but also because you're both very active in the weed stocks subreddit, 99.8% chance that you two are the same person.
Do you remember when I said you were paranoid?
But the other thing is that when you gave me your email address, I plugged it into Google and it showed me that your name was Nito1337. So I have to guess that you're the same person.
Well, okay. So here's the thing, Larbird33.
Yeah.
If that was me,
yeah.
And that account had been, say, banned, I don't mind if Big Australian Boat gets banned because, you know, I have, you know, I'm like Michael Scott with paper companies. I have a million names. I could keep going. Sure. But if I were to come out and say that I'm using another account, you know, if that is something that I would do, like, you know, I might get banned as well. So, I mean, I guess the thing is like,
okay,
if you want to, if you want a big reveal here, I'll reveal it. If we want to just kind of leave it, you know,
let's
to your amazing detective skills.
Let's not confirm one way or the other.
It's totally up to you.
But is that your only major? Just answer two questions. Is that your only? Well, okay.
If it was,
yeah, was that your?
If
only
I only ever had two Reddit accounts, like, yes, probably.
And then not confirming that you are him or not, but do you have any knowledge of whether or not he is banned?
I do believe that he is banned. He's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
So I do remember. Here's the thing. I remember some of his posts. And
he was a great poster. League of Legends legend.
This is the thing, man. Like, I remember he posted a hype trailer. So he did this hype trailer before the 2018.
Great hype trailer. Am I wrong?
Hype trailer. And I remember he got it stolen by some random YouTube account.
That's right.
And not only that, and looking at his post history, I mean, I see this guy is a videographer, much like myself. He has a edit station that puts mine to shame, and he has a C100 Canon camera, which is better than the one I use. So I just want to say, man, you don't have to confirm one way or another, but assuming that that you make hype videos and you have that battle station similar to that, you and I should get along really well, because I don't know if you realize this, I make videos for a living, and we're obviously both Celtic fans. So
yeah, so do I, and apparently Celtic Nito does too, or whoever, you know, Nito, whatever his name is. That's crazy. What a big coincidence. I think we do get along, and you know, I listened to your podcast, and I'll be honest, like, I was expecting you to be some, like, you know, 60-year-old miserable shut-in that, like, never saw the sun and just bitched online all day. And then I heard your podcast, and you're obviously not that. You're very well spoken and knowledgeable, which is why I definitely wanted to come on and chat with you. So it's nice to know that you're not, you know, what my mind created as your avatar.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. So, just coincidentally, are you a videographer just like Nito1337?
Yeah, I am. It's strange. I actually have the same camera as him, which is crazy.
Wow, amazing. So, do you do like professional video stuff?
Yeah, I do. I do some commercials, some docu-type work, a lot of weddings, obviously. I feel like most people that do videography solo are wedding videographers.
Yep.
So, I do a lot of that type of stuff, and I love it. I used to be in journalism, TV news. Yep. After that, you know, the thing about TV news is it's great if you love high stress and very little money.
Yep.
So I'm not all about that. I like kind of low stress and a little bit more money. So I decided to just branch out on my own. But I was a journalist for 5-6 years after college. But yeah, and that's how I kind of branched out on my own onto the videography thing. So.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, I similar thing. I started just doing silly YouTube videos, but eventually got a couple weddings, and then got hired by a couple companies out here in Seattle. So I do a lot of corporate videos. I directed a couple short films and stuff for local film festivals and stuff. So, man, we got a lot in common. We both love the Celtics. We're both video guys. And
my sister lives in Seattle, actually. She works at a marketing agency out there.
That's awesome.
She hates Seattle. She wants to leave. I don't know why. Anthony Bourdain went there, though, and he said that it's got the highest concentration of serial killers in the world.
We have a lot of suicides out here, too, so be careful when you tell people to suicide on the internet, right?
That's true.
It rains a lot out here, man. All right, man, so let's put this drama behind us. You and I, we're good, right?
Absolutely. I agree. Let's put it behind us. Let's get along from it. It's nice to know kind of where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So I think that's nice. That's nice.
And I guess you were going to come back to it. Were you in my fantasy basketball league or no?
I was not.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to keep you guessing for a while.
Fair enough. Let's move on to some actual Celtic talk, man. So like,
sounds good.
What's on? Obviously, we had our drama, and there's been a couple little tiny things. One was the Jaylen Brown versus Marcus Morris thing. What was your take on that?
I think it's something that happens. I'm a basketball coach. My father's a basketball coach. I've grown up around the game. You know, I've been around basketball my entire life, competitive basketball. Like I played in college. It's like it's something that happens, and it's obvious. Like it's something that you, as a coach, you kind of want to happen. If people are apathetic, if they're just kind of going with the flow, and they're not showing emotion, that's generally a bad sign. So the fact that these guys are kind of at each other's throats a little bit, it tells me that practices are probably competitive as hell. It tells me that they both care. It tells me that they're both into it, as long as what they were fighting about was basketball. So honestly, I see it as kind of a positive.
I agree with you. There was an article that was written by Jackie McMullen. The article was like the Jaylen Brown's new reality in Boston.
Yep.
So in this article, they talked about how Jaylen had every once in a while there's a confrontation from a player, from one of the older players, maybe Marcus Smart or Marcus Morris, and that he sometimes reacts in silence. I think it's just because he's an introspective type of player, and he's probably surrounded by all these kind of outward personalities. I think some people got a little bit carried away, and I actually posted a comment saying that we keep getting little hints that he's not necessarily fitting in, but I think that was a poor choice of words on my part. It's just probably that he's put a lot of pressure on himself to perform. I think you're right. I think this kind of stuff happens all the time. It probably happens in practice on a daily basis. You're not concerned at all that Jaylen is like not loving this situation?
No, because I don't care if he doesn't love the situation. Like he has no leverage one way or the other. He has to perform. Like if he wants to become the player that he wants to become, like he better start liking the situation if he doesn't. And I really haven't seen anything that shows me that he doesn't want to be in this situation. I think we can all see, watching Jaylen Brown play, that especially towards the beginning of the season, he's trying to do a little bit too much. He's trying to play sort of outside of the skill set that he has. You watch some of the workouts that he did with T-Mac, and seeing him try to do some of those Kobe T-Mac like back down shake moves, turnaround jumpers, that's not really his game, right? And he's getting there. He's getting better at that type of stuff. But what does Jaylen Brown do best? He spots up from three and he attacks closeouts like nobody's business, and he plays good defense. On this team, he is not going to be Jayson Tatum. He is not going to be Kyrie Irving. Jaylen Brown has to embrace his role, and I think he's starting to do that a little bit. He needs to know that the growth that he wants and expects from himself, it's not going to happen in one off season, and especially it's not going to happen on this team. So am I worried about him? No. Like he eventually wants to take that next step and be a Jimmy Butler or be, a top tier player in the league. And he's not going to do that if he's sort of, if people perceive him as sort of a cancer, which I don't think that he is. So I think he's doing all the right things right now. He's starting to get himself back on track. I think we can all see that as well.
Yeah, I think he is. I think the success that they had in the playoffs, which was awesome, I think in a way not backfired, but it's caused kind of a little bit of conflict, because when you have these young guys who really early on were able to carry a team pretty deep into the playoffs, they must not be too jazzed about having this kind of limited role that they have now. I mean, there was, in that game, Jaylen only played 14 minutes. That's probably got to be frustrating for them. But I think it's part of the growth process. And, Kyrie, in the game after that, made some comments about how the young guys just need to be locked in, and they need to, to be champions, they have to put the effort in on a nightly basis. And he's made comments in the past that alluded to guys, when their shot's not falling, not making plays that are helping you win. They're just kind of focused on the fact they miss shots, and that they need to just not worry about the shots, but just do all the little things that can impact basketball. I think it's, we have to remember we do have a very young team here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he's definitely talking about, Tatum, I would guess, and Jaylen Brown, and probably Rozier as well. The thing to remember about this team and what made them so good last year was that they were not afraid in the playoffs of those moments. And the reason they were not afraid of those moments is because Brad had the confidence in them to let them go out there and do what they have to do. And so when I see people criticizing Terry Rozier for the shots that he's taking, and yes, he should not be taking shots with 20 seconds left in the shot clock, but in order for those guys to be good and be the players that we want them to be, they have to have that freedom. And I think, I truly believe that over time, assuming they all have the correct mindset, which is we want to win, which I believe that they all do, over time, that will sort itself out. They will still have the confidence to take those shots in those moments, and they will also be smart shots. Because at the end of the day, I think above all else, these guys want to win, and I think that's how Danny Ainge constructed the team. Guys like Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Terry Rozier, these are high intelligence guys, Marcus Smart. And yes, they want to get their numbers. Yes, they want to get paid, but I think they do see the big picture, and the big picture is obviously a championship.
Yeah. The other thing is I think people can get totally, they can see some kind of incident like this and totally overreact. And as an example, the funniest part of this video to me was it pans over and Gordon Hayward is all off in the distance, kind of just scratching his ear.
In his own world, thinking about League of Legends or something.
Exactly, thinking about League of Legends. So if you wanted to, you could have spun it like that, especially because the night after, Kyrie's screaming at Gordon Hayward for making the wrong pass. If you wanted to, and I'm not saying do this, I'm just giving you an example of how they can spin this. They could say that Gordon's not fitting in with the team. He's off on his own in the timeouts. Kyrie's getting in his face. I mean, they're fine. The team's going to be fine. Obviously, they're having some chemistry issues right now, but Hayward's still trying to work his way to 100%. These guys are still trying to fit in their roles. And 2 games ago, when they played Indiana, that was the best game they've had all season. It was like the best game all year. Those guys were all locked in. We've seen glimpses of what this team can be. You can't get too low, and you can't get too high. Of course not. Right? Yeah,
of course not. And they're still experimenting. Brad experiments. Like, people are saying, we need to not have this lineup, or we need to not have that lineup. Well, it's like Brad is doing what he's always done. That's how I know we have so many new fans commenting and watching the game, because Brad experiments, and by the time playoffs roll around, he's going to have so many advanced stats and metrics and whatever to back up this lineup versus that lineup in this situation versus that situation. Like, right now, failing a little bit is almost as important as success. He needs to know what works and what doesn't work.
I totally agree with that. I've said that a few times. So I forget the guy's name, but when Brad was originally hired, they talked about how he was bringing his stat guru from Butler, who was an advanced stat guy that would look at data basically. And we saw it in his first couple years in Boston. The Celtics would always spend the first half of the season experimenting with lineups, just like you said, trying out different things. And then right around the midpoint or post All-Star break, Brad would take that data and figure out, okay, these are the lineups that are working, and this is how I can exploit all these different situations. And we would just kind of turn a corner right after the All-Star break. Last year was a little bit unique in that we were solid right from the beginning, but usually that's how it worked with this team. I don't know if people remember, but Brad's always done this. It's always been a lot of experimentation, then he tightens up the rotation, guys figure out their roles, and we start cooking. So again, it's just got to give it till after the All-Star break, and I'm sure this team will start playing well. But I do have to say that a few hours after this most recent loss to Orlando, there was a tweet that said that it was a couple of hours after the game ended, said that Kyrie is sitting at his locker room just staring straight ahead. He hasn't showered yet. Most of the other players have already dressed and left. I think someone needs to check up and see if Kyrie's still there. If he's still there, I'm concerned. But
I could see him doing that after a win, though, too. I mean, he's kind of a weird guy, right?
He's a bit unique.
He's a strange cat.
But
he's a strange cat.
The number one tweet in response to that is a picture of Kyrie wearing a Knicks jersey. Are you at all concerned, even though he's said he's going to stick around? Are you worried that this guy could still leave?
Hell no. That would be such a I wouldn't put it completely past him, because I mean, let's face it. I mean, he's a bit of a wild card. But, he's got that commercial with his dad about talking about how he doesn't want somebody to wear number 11 again. And he already came out and said, hey, I'm going to sign here again. It would be worse than what Kevin Durant did, or at least on par with what Kevin Durant did.
Yeah.
Which I honestly don't blame I never hated Kevin Durant for that, because I wouldn't want to play with Russell Westbrook either. Fuck that guy. Pardon my language. I don't know if this is a family-friendly podcast.
I never hated Durant for leaving Oklahoma, especially as someone from Seattle. I mean, we didn't like the zombie Sonics, but I did not like that he went to Golden State. I would have been happy with him pretty much going anywhere than that. I mean, maybe I would have been pissed about the Lakers, but it's just like of all the teams, I've got like a 13-minute video rant where I talk about how much I was mad about Durant going to that team, but him leaving never bothered me. I just think that Westbrook's a bad guy to play with, and fuck Oklahoma for stealing the Sonics. So
agreed on all points.
But yeah, so honestly, I'm less concerned about Kyrie leaving than I am about the idea that this team could go through some significant changes through trade. And that kind of helps me transition, I think, to the next question I have for you. So obviously, if you check any kind of Celtic thread on Reddit or Celtics blog or Real GM, wherever, after a loss like we just had, you're going to see people saying, trade this guy, he sucks right now, or trade this guy. I mean, obviously, there's been times this year where we were saying, trade Hayward, he's a bum. Scott in episode 1 was ready to give him away for absolutely nothing. People have times this year have been like, trade Jaylen Brown. He's not working. Let's sell low on him.
Right.
And obviously everyone wants to trade Terry Rozier. Everyone always wants to trade a guy when their stock is really, really low, but nobody ever considers trading them when their stock is high. Like, they're afraid to do that. That's just, why would you trade someone who's playing well? That's sacrilege. And a perfect example of this is Kevin O'Connor was on Bill Simmons' podcast in the offseason right before the draft. He was saying to Bill, he was like, Boston might want to consider trading Jaylen Brown, who's coming off a great playoff, for a high pick that they could use on someone like Luka Doncic, or Mo Bamba was another guy he threw out. Oof. But Bill Simmons' reaction at the time was, he says, nah, if they do that, I'm going to fight everyone. I'm going to start with you. I'm going to fight the entire Ringer staff. Like, how dare you suggest trading Jaylen Brown? So
It's funny because I just want to, because he's the biggest Luka Doncic fan in the world.
Well, now he is, yeah. And flash forward a couple months later, not only is Bill Simmons like obsessed with Luka, but there was a podcast he made where he said that he wanted to trade Jaylen Brown to Atlanta for a Dallas pick, which at the time of him recording that podcast, that pick was projected 17th. So he was like, I just want to trade him to Atlanta. So he went from saying like, I would fight you for trading him for Doncic, to saying, get rid of him for a number 17 pick in a bad draft. And I think that's a perfect example of how most fans react. The idea of trading high is just like, how dare you? How dare you decide to do that? And that kind of brings me to my question. So Marcus Smart and Marcus Morris are having career seasons. Marcus Morris is playing at a borderline all-star level. Marcus Smart is finally shooting at an average rate from three, shooting like 35.4% from three. Obviously, those guys are playing really, really well in our starting lineup. Before the season, people were ready to get rid of Marcus Morris for nothing. They were like, yeah, I mean, we need to get under this luxury tax line. He's an expiring contract. He probably doesn't fit into our long-term plans. We have to give minutes to Hayward and Brown. And now people are like, how dare you trade Smart or Morris? What are your general thoughts on the concept of trading high? Those guys are both playing really, really well. Is that crazy?
No, yes and no. It's not crazy. First of all, I just want to pat myself on the back because I was all about trading Avery Bradley for Mook. Everybody hated it at the time. I thought it was a fantastic trade. I didn't hate Avery Bradley, but I thought Mook is a significant upgrade, and clearly he is, right? Yep. I mean, so the problem with trading high on Mook right now is he doesn't make enough money. He makes what was his salary, like $5 million or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to get anybody in return. Like, first of all, he's going to be a half a year rental. I'm just ruling out trading Marcus Smart because I think if you trade Marcus Smart, this team falls apart.
Yeah.
I think he's just too valuable to the team right now to trade. So, but the concept of trading high, I agree with. Like, that's what Ainge did with Isaiah Thomas. And while I hated the trade at the time, it made me sad. It made me angry. It was the right move.
So Ainge has had a pattern of doing this. I mean, one of the first ones I remember is when we brought back Antoine Walker for his second stint in Boston. We went on a crazy stretch. We had won 11 out of 12 games. So we were playing really, really well. And that's when Ainge decided to trade away Walker again. So he's like, and people were freaking out at the time. Like, what are you doing? We just won 11 out of 12 games. Why did you trade away Walker? And of course, like Avery Bradley, like you just brought up as well. So the idea isn't totally crazy. I do agree with you. It's really hard to wrap my mind around the idea of getting rid of Marcus Smart because he's such a leader on the team. I actually reached out to, I don't know if you follow Danger Cart on Twitter, really great at understanding cap situations and stuff. And I reached out to him before this and just asked him, like, what is your general idea? And his take was interesting because he basically said, like, trading Smart's a non-starter, not only because he's a leader, but because his salary is key if we decide to try to trade for Davis this summer,
right,
that might be a key piece of the salary that we're going to have to give up, because otherwise you're giving up Hayward or Horford. That $12.5 million that Smart makes him a really key part of a potential Davis trade, which of course, again, you're talking about getting rid of Smart. That kind of sucks, but
for Anthony Davis?
Yeah, for Anthony Davis, you'd have to do it. But I was just curious. I mean, I was just kind of... So Smart can finally be traded as of Tuesday of this week, the 15th, because he signed that new contract. So he is available to be traded. And not that I'm advocating trading for him, but I doubt that anyone else is doing a podcast even thinking about it. So we might as well talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
So one thing that I thought was interesting is when he first signed his contract, the amount of money he signed for, which is $11.6 million this year, combined with Morris's $5.3 million, would have allowed you to take back around $21 million in salary, which was a perfect amount, coincidentally, to take back Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
So I had it in my mind. I was like, I wonder if part of that is just in case Jimmy Butler's available this season. This is, of course, before he was traded.
Right.
I'm wondering if that was part of it. If it was like, just keep our options open. If we have to trade for Butler later, those two combined with a first probably gets it done. And it probably would have had Butler still been available in January, right?
Yes. Yes. Do you wish that we had him? Like, what are your thoughts on Butler? Because I am all out on Butler. You can buy all of my Jimmy Butler stock. I don't want it anymore.
I used to jokingly refer to him as premium brand Ricky Davis on Celtic, which was like completely exaggerated. I mean, he is obviously an all-star player, but I just felt like there were signs of him being a little bit of a head case.
Yes.
Even back when he was in Chicago, and everyone wanted to trade for him when he was in Chicago. So, I mean, I was lukewarm on him, and also just from a personality standpoint. But a lot of that was a reaction to the idea of let's give up a top 3 pick in Jaylen Brown plus all these other assets to get this guy. And it's like, he's not someone who is going to turn around
take us
your
over
team.
the top.
Yeah, I didn't see him as being someone who would take you over the top. I do think he's a really good player. I mean, I really do think he's a really good player.
Yeah.
For the right price, like if he had been available right now, imagine he's still on Minnesota right now and still putting up his 19, 20 points per game with really efficient this season. Imagine he's available right now and that guy was an option to trade Smart and Morris for. I might have to do that. Like, just the way this team is going right now, I don't know if
I might have to do it too. That's an insane prospect. And
the other part of that is like knowing that he and Kyrie are friends, it would have put us in a position where we could feel pretty confident in being able to re-sign him. So if the price was really low, if it was something like a Smart plus Morris plus a pick, then like a low pick, then yeah, you'd probably have to do that. But obviously he's not on the table anymore, and I'm not really too upset about it. I mean, I think that Jaylen Brown is going to eventually, hopefully, become a player similar to that. And Morris is playing really, really well right now, and I still don't think that Golden State's a team that's too beatable once they are healthy, so not too worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of those two guys, so if you combine those two, you can take back around $21 million in salary. If you add in a Rozier or a Yabu, you can take back about as much as $25 million. Is there any deals that you could find intriguing at this point, or is Smart just so untouchable? I'll throw out a couple that I just kind of thought about.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, are you of the opinion that we should make a move?
I think that, so I brought up in episode 1 when I was talking to Scott, that Bradley Beal's still available, and they have put the price on Bradley Beal at, I think they said, a player, a young player, and a pick. I mean, technically, Marcus Smart is a young player, Marcus Morris is a player, and a pick. We certainly have picks.
Technically, he's a player.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I mean, that seems like something that if the Wizards call you up right now and say, hey, we'll give you Bradley Beal for one of your picks plus Morris and Smart, does that intrigue you?
Yeah, it does. Bradley Beal is amazing. I love Bradley Beal. What did he put up the other day? Like 42 in that overtime game?
Yeah,
something like that. He rips. But at the same time, Marcus Smart adds a dynamic to this team that I don't think any other team in the NBA has. And it's hard to put a price on that. It's hard to value that. It's hard to quantify what Marcus Smart means. And I understand that that's kind of a cop-out. Mm-hmm. But he's got that X factor, man. And so he really does.
I agree. I do agree that he's huge to this team. But, of course, this team is a middling seed team right now, the way they're playing. And I guess like my thought process, it's the same kind of thing that I had when I used to get into those arguments about Rajon Rondo. It was like, yes, he's a crucial part of our offense. He's, a huge intangibles guy. He is a great defender, but would this team look a lot better with a shooter in his role? And it's the same kind of argument with Marcus Smart. I'm like, this guy, obviously he's playing really, really well and he's shooting really, really well. But just like the act of taking both him and Morris off the team without any additions, that totally changes the dynamic of the team. That means that now Jaylen Brown's getting significant minutes. That means that Gordon Hayward's getting significant minutes. Maybe those guys start to gel. Like, just having those guys in the starting lineup, maybe that works. Like, there's so many factors that could play into it that I don't think it's as simple as saying you take out the heart and soul by removing Smart. We've seen this so many times. It's like, how could you dare trade Avery Bradley, right?
Yeah. No, that's true. That's fair. Avery Bradley, king of the long contested pull-up too, which, best shot in basketball. But that's neither here nor there. I understand what you're saying. That makes sense. I agree with that.
Especially if you were to add, obviously, a Bradley Beal, who's an all-star level shooting guard. That totally changes the team. Then you have Kyrie and Beal starting. You probably have Tatum and Morris and Horford still starting. Maybe Hayward eventually gets into that starting lineup. I mean, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, but if you're Washington, are you going to trade Bradley Beal to the Celtics?
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure if they're in a position to really make their way out of it at this point. So that would be hard, though. You're right; they are rivals. But moving on,
if they trade Bradley Beal, they've given up at that point.
Totally.
Because they're trying to get rid of Wall, which they can't get rid of Wall. Like they're just stuck in perpetual mediocrity forever, and that makes me happy. Fuck them.
They're probably going to have to. They're probably in a position where if they want to get rid of Wall, they have to attach a pick, right? So,
right.
If Boston called them up and said, "Hey, we'll give you Smart, Morris, a pick that you can use to try to dump John Wall with down the line, and maybe Rozier. Oof. Rozier can slot in as your starting point guard right now." I don't know. Maybe the Wizards consider it, but let's move on past Beal because we've talked about that a bit. Some other ideas, like there's a couple ways you can look at that idea of trading either Morris by himself or Morris and Smart. So one of the things is that Boston is still a few million over the luxury tax threshold. So their salary right now is 126 million and the luxury tax threshold is 123 million. So before the season, all these articles were being written about how eventually Boston's going to have to dump a guy just to get under that line. It's not essential from a fan standpoint because what do we care about the amount of money that the owners have to pay? But
right.
The problem is there's the repeater tax that will kick in future years. So we wanted to try to avoid that this season so that it doesn't become an issue down the line when we try to start re-signing guys like Jaylen Brown. And so one thing they could do, and that a lot of people supported before he started looking amazing, was trade Marcus Morris by himself for a guy making $2 million or less. And then that ends up putting you under that luxury tax line, and maybe you end up getting a first-round pick in return. I do think, I agree with you that he's an expiring contract, so that makes it hard to imagine getting a first, but
right.
I think because of his level of play and the fact that you carry over his bird rights, I do think that you probably could. I don't know if we should, but you probably could get a late first or a protected first for him. Would that intrigue you if some team was like, hey, we'll give you up a top 20 protected first?
No, I think we need Morris if we're going to make a run in the playoffs.
Okay.
I maintain. So I said at the beginning of the year that this has the potential to be an all-time team. One of the most talented teams ever assembled, and I really mean that. And once they gel, I don't want to mess with the roster. I really don't. I don't want to trade anybody. I like Terry Rozier. I like Marcus Morris. I like Jaylen Brown. I like Gordon Hayward. I think the sheer talent on this team, Danny Ainge has just done something that no GM has ever been able to do before. He's put together this squad of people, and I realize I'm kind of fanboying a little bit right now, but it is absolutely incredible to me the amount of talent that he has assembled on one team. At this stage in their careers, everybody, I feel like in 15 years, you look back on this team, because we're not going to be able to keep everybody together. You're going to look back and say, wow, look at that squad. It's going to be like how people look at that OKC team that didn't win.
I agree.
So, I don't want to move Marcus at all. But at the same time, he is an expiring contract, so he would have to go to a contender, right? And so, we're going to get a first-round pick from a contender. They're not going to be, it's not going to be a great pick anyway. So I don't really see trading Marcus Morris at all.
Okay. So I'm just gonna throw out some random ideas just to see if it would intrigue you.
Okay.
This one I hate just because Philadelphia is involved, but it was an idea. So just to give you the idea of the concept. So Philadelphia has like the expiring contract of Wilson Chandler, and they have like the expiring contract of Amir Johnson. If they called you up, because they are obviously lacking in depth, if they called you up and they said, we'll give you those expiring contracts for Morris and Smart, but we'll also give you our 2020 unprotected first, which isn't going to be great, but then also the 2021 unprotected Miami first, which they own. Does that make you think, ooh, because then like now you're talking about gaining assets that can be used to trade for Davis potentially, which is like a future pick, because part of the problem with trading for Davis is it's going to be if he's available and he's potentially being able to trade for, it's going to be after the draft. But the idea of saying we can give you this 2021 Miami first as well, does that intrigue you, or is the idea of giving these guys the Sixers just appalling?
I hate that. Okay. I hate helping out the Sixers at all. And I also don't believe that Miami is going to be bad in 2 years. Do you? I mean, Pat Riley is like kind of he sold his soul. I feel like he's the devil.
That's a fair point.
He's going to make something happen down there.
Here's another one, and this is in the opposite direction. So Memphis, who obviously is not doing well this season, Marc Gasol is signed on for this season and has a player option for next season. He makes about $24 million. If they call you up and say, hey, this is not working, we don't really have a use for Marc Gasol anymore, we'll trade you Gasol for Morris, Smart, maybe a late first or something. Do you do that?
Ooh, that is very intriguing. Can you imagine? All right, so we've got Gasol and Horford, and the other three that we're going to start as well. That's a hell of a lineup right there.
Do you think Gasol and Horford could play together?
Hell yes, they would love playing together. They're both great passers. I think that's deadly. That's deadly.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? So
I like that. So I mean, it's tough to say because I would hate getting rid of Marcus Smart, but I mean that lineup would be very intriguing because I mean Marc Gasol is just an absolute beast. I love Marc Gasol. I always have. Yeah, I would not hate that trade if they did that.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, other than that, you can look at. So we need to get $3 million less than we currently are paying right now to get under that luxury tax line. So you can pull up like expiring contracts and see anyone who's making in the range of 13.5 to 14 million, because we're sending out 17 in a hypothetical trade. So there's guys like Gortat for the Clippers who's expiring. So if the Clippers offered you Gortat's expiring for those two guys and gave you picks, is it intriguing or not? Same with like the Suns. I don't see them doing it. Brooklyn is on the verge of being a potential. Actually, they are in a playoff position right now. So if Brooklyn said, we'll give you Farid's expiring contract for those guys and give you picks, does that intrigue you? But I mean, are you out on the idea of trading those guys for picks? You definitely want to have Smart here, right?
Yeah, I want to have Smart here. I'm out on trading for picks at all. You know, especially for somebody like Farid or who's the other guy you mentioned out west?
Gortat.
Gortat. Yeah, I mean, we've got Baines. We don't need Gortat.
That was more just like bringing in basically an expiring contract. And,
no, I hear you
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm out. I don't want to get rid of those guys. I think they're too important.
Okay, fair enough. It's just something to keep in mind. Boston we're entering trade season, and obviously things aren't working quite right now, chemistry wise. And
I agree 100%. You know, 25-17 with this squad is not ideal, but at the same time, it's far from bad.
Yep, it is far from bad. I think we still have so much talent. It's just the only concern is just that it's not meshing really well, and I don't know if clearing out guys or consolidating would help. I would think that a shakeup could work really well, or it could even be worse. But we are entering trade season, and you know, Smart might be untouchable now. I don't know, but he is a guy to keep in mind because he's now available to be traded as of Tuesday. So just something to keep in mind to see.
If I would guess somebody that would be moved, like it would probably end up being Rozier, right?
I agree.
I mean,
yeah.
It's just looking like, you know, all signs are pointing in that direction.
But it goes back to that same thing. Like Rozier has been struggling quite a bit. His trade value is probably a lot lower than it would be if he was playing well. So I mean, just imagine this. Imagine a couple months from now, Smart is no longer shooting really well, and he's back on the bench because Jaylen Brown finally earned his starting spot back. And
Definite possibility.
And imagine that Marcus Morris has now come back down to earth, and he's been bricking them because, law of averages, he's been shooting crazy well. At that point, if we're going to start to see a bunch of people on the Celtics thread saying we should have traded Smart and Morris, just know that you and I had this conversation. We brought it up. We talked about it.
I agree. No, I'll stand by it, man. I'll own it if I'm wrong. I will definitely own it. But yeah, I think there's too much talent to get rid of it, and I think they're going to put it together. I really do.
All right. One last thing, I guess, before we wrap this up, you had some thoughts on Time Lord you wanted to share. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about them.
Yeah, Time Lord, it's funny, you see all these posts like, you need to play Time Lord more minutes, and, Time Lord, he affects the game so much when he's in there. I find it ridiculous when people want to try to allocate minutes because they see the games on TV. And so, like, they think they know better than Brad Stevens. Like, you don't think that Brad Stevens is seeing the same shit that you guys see? Like, right. you don't think that the Celtics staff, like these basketball professionals, see the same things that you got? There are so many factors that go into coaching a basketball team. Like, there are so many extra. Like, you don't know what his attitude is like. You don't know, like, there are some guys like that you don't want to play. Just because of the way that they behave in practice, and you don't want to reward that behavior. And that is, even if they're great players, like, that is just as important to the chemistry of the team as somebody actually putting up numbers. Because you start playing that guy who's messing around and not doing the things the way that they're supposed to be done. You start giving that guy minutes, and then other guys stop caring and they stop doing the right things, and it creates a bad effect. And I'm not saying that Time Lord is doing those things. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, like, nobody knows everything that's going into it. Like, Time Lord, like, he doesn't know how to defend the pick and roll very well.
Right.
Like, he doesn't, like, we don't know what's going on in practice. Like, he might not be able to wrap his head around some of the concepts that Brad is trying to give to the team. He has plans in the future to play Time Lord more minutes, but he will do that when Time Lord is ready.
I'm surprised by the amount of minutes he has been getting. Like, I thought there was a really high possibility that he would just spend the entire season in the G League. But, like, there was a point in that Orlando game, he came in pretty early. He was in, like, the second quarter? Mm-hmm. Based on basically that Miami game where he was crucial to our run back. Like, he's earning minutes. I do think it's probably too early to give him a ton of minutes, but... Like, do you see him, what do you think his role will be towards the end of the season? Is he totally out of rotation, or is he someone who could actually earn a big-time role?
I mean, obviously, I hope he's part of the rotation. Like, I hope that he's getting it. It's a big change for him. Like, he's got to go through, like, an NBA season, like, from what I understand. I've obviously never been a part of it. Like, it's grueling. Yeah. Like, and he is a young kid. I mean, he's 20 years old. I mean, he's just a young kid. He's getting accustomed to being a professional, having money, just traveling, just being sleepy all the time. Like, I hope that, yes, I hope that he becomes a part of the rotation. But if he's not, there are reasons for it. It's not like Brad has some friggin' vendetta against the Time Lord. Like, everyone wants the Time Lord to do well. But the fact that you see him play well, like, that's Brad putting him in situations where he knows that Time Lord can succeed. And that's what he needs right now. He needs confidence. He needs to know that he can get in there and affect the game. And Brad is putting him in positions to affect the game. And that is important right now. We don't want him to, become Kwame Brown.
Right. I agree. Yep. So he's 21. He's actually older than Jayson Tatum, which is crazy to think.
That is crazy.
That's not to say that Time Lord is old. It's just to say, Jesus, Jayson Tatum's so young. That guy's going to be so good, hopefully. But yeah. It's fine for Williams to take some time, and I think Brad's kind of slowly incorporating him. I think we're getting some great looks at him, and hopefully he'll develop into a serious player down the line. It would be cool if he could develop really quickly and become this defensive centerpiece, but it's probably not going to be this year,
I agree. I agree 100%. So where do you stand on the team right now? Are you positive? Are you negative? Because talking to you, you seem like a pretty positive dude, but reading you, you seem like the world is ending all the time.
Oh, man. It's constant just disagreeing with myself, I think, right? No, but I'm generally still positive because I've said all along that with Hayward, he's such a key part of what we expect this team to be built around is a star in Hayward. And I'm still holding out hope that after that All-Star break, he's going to be a totally different player. I've been saying that all season, and it's hard for me to get like super worked up and depressed when we're struggling before the All-Star break, when I keep saying all season, I'm giving him till after the All-Star break. So I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, I do think that this team right now is a one All-Star team. We have Kyrie Irving and a bunch of guys who aren't really playing at a star level.
I agree.
And if you have a one All-Star team, that doesn't make it much different from a team like Indiana or a team like the Bucks or any of these teams above us who are, going to be up and down all season as they go with the ebbs and flow of their star player. And that is what we are right now. I know that people had this idea that we were going to have Tatum and Brown playing as stars and adding a couple more stars, and then somehow Terry Rozier was still going to be playing as a star, even off the bench. Like, we built our entire premise on having all these stars. That's not what we are right now. We're a one-star team. But it's a long season. Tatum is still showing progress. I know people are getting very impatient with him, and he is only still 20 years old, but by the end of the season, something might click for him. He is showing progress. There's a great video on Reddit right now. So the Twitter user Ben Taylor, who is ELGEE35, posted this video. It's a Jayson Tatum analysis breakdown, and talks about the kind of stuff that he's done well this season, some of the things he has to work on. It's clear this guy's got a ton of things that he still needs to work on, but he's also showing signs of a player that should still hopefully end up being a star, and hopefully that happens really quickly. So overall, I'm optimistic that we're going to figure some things out as Brad tightens the rotations and as guys get more comfortable in their roles. And then as the trade deadline comes and goes and these guys realize this is us, this is who we are, we're going to have to just do this. That tends to help a bit too. I'm still positive. How do you feel about it?
I feel good still. We had the longest winning streak in the NBA, and all of a sudden we lose 2 straight, and we should trade everybody. People need to calm the hell down. I feel good about this team. It's important to, going back to the Brad thing and him adjusting rotations, it's important to remember that, like you said, they brought in their own stat guy. They have advanced stats and stuff that we are not privy to, that we do not know. They literally have stat formulas that are specific to that team that they use. The game is so different now than it was even 10 years ago, that they're able to quantify all this data. And I just feel like so much of what Brad does is experiment and collect data.
Yep.
Everything they do is just data collected. Even so, when they lose, they are learning a lot, and when they win, they're learning a lot. So I think that it's silly to panic right now at this point in the season. I don't care what place we're in. I still think we have the most talent in the conference by far. Maybe not even by far, but I think we have more talent than Toronto. So I don't really care where we end up as far as seeding goes. I just want us firing all cylinders, by the time the playoffs roll around, because I think we'll be able to compete with everyone if everyone at that point has bought in and everybody is rearing to go. Nobody's going to stand in our way.
I agree. And it's all about, like you said, collecting data, and the more data you have, the better decisions you can make. Kind of like when I collected all that data and found out your alt account.
Alleged alt account.
All right, man. Well, it's good to talk to you.
You too, man.
And let's keep in touch, and no more death threats.
Yeah, it sounds good. Hey, if I make my way out to Seattle to visit my sister, let's grab a beer.
Let's do it, man. All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Bye. All right, so that was Big Australian Boat, or Nito1337 or something. But anyways, sort of seeing a familiar pattern here. Guys I'm expecting to be total jerks from the internet end up being pretty great in conversation. So I know a large part of that's probably how I carry myself on the internet. I guess I can rub people the wrong way, so I'll try to work on that, all right? Here's my obligatory request to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And hey, I'm looking for feedback, so if there's anything you guys want to see more of, anything you want me to discuss, if you'd like to start a petition to bring back Scott, just let me know in the comments. Also, I've been thinking about doing a mega trade deadline pod later this month where I bring on a bunch of kind of rapid fire guests to tell me about their best trade idea. So if you want to sell me on your great trade idea in a future episode, send me a PM and maybe I'll have you on. Yeah. All right. Thanks.